Hello, I'm Angela Burcham, and today I'll show you how to conduct a 15-minute small group power session for your students aimed at improving fluency and comprehension with multisyllabic decoding, based on Chapter 6 of How to Plan Differentiated Reading Instruction by Sharon Walpole and the late Michael C. McKenna. This 15-minute small group lesson is designed for third grade students. The instructional focus is on improving fluency and comprehension with multisyllabic decoding. There are 4 parts to this lesson. First, 2 minutes is spent on multisyllabic decoding. Second, 5 minutes is spent on the first read of the reading passage. Third, 5 minutes is spent on the second read of the same reading passage. Fourth, 3 minutes is spent on comprehension discussion questions of the reading passage. 2 minutes on multisyllabic decoding. I'll be demonstrating day 1, week 15, combination of syllable types on page 236. To introduce it, I would say something like, you know all the syllable types, and you know how to divide and read words with 2 syllables. Today, we will divide and read words that have more than 2 syllables. The challenge is to determine where to divide the word. A strategy you can use is to place a dot underneath each vowel and an underline below the vowel team. Blends and vowel teams are usually not divided. Digraphs are never divided. Remember that the real test is to ask if the word you read sounds right. If it doesn't, divide it in a different way. Here's my first word. I will go ahead and put a dot under the vowel E. I will put a dot under the vowel U. I am going to underline the vowel A because there is an E here, and this is going to be a vowel, consonant, silent E vowel type. And now I'm going to read it by word parts, and then I'll read the entire word quickly. Late. Speculate. Here, I'll underline O and R because that's an R-controlled vowel. The U and the E. Now I'll read it by word parts. Pine. Porcupine. Turbulent. Recorder. Understand. Department. Hibernate. Camcorder. These 3 letters make up the long I sounds. I'm going to underline I, G, and H. Now I'll read it by word parts. Full. Now I'll read the entire word. Delightful. Laborer. Now, after I have finished that 2-minute multisyllabic decoding routine with 10 words, I am now ready for the 5 minutes of the first reading. I can either choose echo reading, where I read a portion and then the students echo back and read that portion of the passage that I'm reading, Or I can do choral reading, which we all read it together. Because my students don't need as much support, I am going to choose choral reading. If you think your students need more support, I would recommend using echo reading. I'm going to be using the sample lesson for a third grade fluency and comprehension group on page 217. I am using Hana's Suitcase. Since we are starting a new book, I will introduce key questions at the end of the second read. If, however, I was continuing a previous story, I would start by activating prior knowledge. I would ask questions like, what do we already know about these characters and events? Or I may ask, let's review what we learned yesterday. As I mentioned before, I'm going to be modeling choral reading. The students will be reading with me. Introduction. Hana's Suitcase is a true story that takes place on 3 continents over a period of almost 70 years. It brings together the experiences of a girl and her family in Czechoslovakia in the 1930s and 40s, a young woman and a group of children in Tokyo, Japan, and a man in Toronto, Canada in modern times. Between 1939 and 1945, the world was at war. Nazi dictator Adolf Hitler wanted Germany to rule the globe. At the center of his vision was the brutal elimination of the Jewish people from the face of the earth. To get rid of his enemies, he set up dozens of prison camps called concentration camps across Europe. Jewish women, men, and children from almost every country on the continent were deported. They were torn from their homes and sent to the camps, where they endured terrible suffering. Many people died of hunger and disease. Most were murdered. In these death camps and elsewhere, where Hitler's followers carried out his terrible plan, 6 million Jews were killed. 1.5 million Jewish children were among them. In 1945, the war ended and the entire world learned the horrors of what had gone on in the concentration camps. Since then, people have been trying to understand more about what is today known as the Holocaust, the worst example of mass murder or genocide in human history. How did it happen? How can we make sure it will never happen again? In Japan, a country allied with Nazi Germany during the Second World War, attention to the history of the Holocaust is relatively new. An anonymous Japanese donor who wanted to contribute to global tolerance and understanding decided it was important for young people in Japan to learn more about this aspect of world history. Single-handedly, this donor has endowed the Tokyo Holocaust Education Resource Center, which is dedicated to that purpose. At a children's forum on the Holocaust held in 1999, 200 students from schools in the Tokyo area met Holocaust survivor Yafa Eliak. She told them about how almost every Jew in her village, young and old, was murdered by the Nazis. At the end of her talk, she reminded her audience that children have the power to create peace in the future. A dozen of the young Japanese people there took her challenge to heart and formed a group called Small Wings. Now, the members of Small Wings, aged 8 to 18, meet every month. They publish a newsletter, help run the Tokyo Holocaust Education Resource Center, and work to interest other Japanese children in the history of the Holocaust. They do their work under the guidance of Fumiko Ishioka, the director of the Tokyo Holocaust Center. The Suitcase, Hana's suitcase is a key to the success of their mission. In it lies a story of terrible sadness and great joy, a reminder of the brutality of the past and of hope for the future. So after the first read, we'll go right into the 5 minutes of the second reading. Now, you could choose partner reading or you could choose whisper reading. If you feel that your students need more support, then I would go ahead and choose the partner reading. I am going to be doing the whisper reading with my students. I am working on prosody with my students. So I really am working on having students read in a way that sounds like a conversation. So they'll be holding the little phones so that they can hear themselves read. So I would set the timer for 5 minutes. Then after the 5-minute timer is up, then we would go to the comprehension discussion questions. Now, if they finish that reading before the timer went off, I would just have them reread it again. And now we're ready for the last portion of the 15-minute lesson, which is 3 minutes of comprehension discussion. And this is where I would ask inferential questions to guide the discussion. And for Hana's suitcase, I'm just taking the questions from page 217 in the Walpole and McKenna book, and it's introduction questions for discussion. The questions they recommended were, what kind of story is Hana's suitcase? What were some of the actions of the Nazi dictator Adolf Hitler? How do children have the power to create peace in the future? Which is a huge question, and I would have students go back to the text and see what the students in Tokyo did to create peace in the future. And then if time permitted, I would ask students, what is genocide? And what other genocides besides the Nazi genocide in World War II have been recorded in history? And there you have it, 4 components to improve fluency and comprehension. I've walked you through the 2-minute multisyllabic decoding routine. I've walked you through the 5-minute first read, and I chose choral reading. I've also walked you through the 5-minute second read, and I chose whisper reading with my students. But of course, you can choose partner reading if you think your students need more support. And lastly, I've walked you through 3 minutes of comprehension discussion questions. And there you have it, a 15-minute small group lesson to improve fluency and comprehension with multisyllabic decoding.